$9 billion. That's the number shaking Washington tonight, and it's tied to allegations now erupting inside a congressional hearing. Lawmakers claim warnings were ignored, whistleblowers silenced, and money may have moved far beyond U.S. borders. Is this catastrophic incompetence, or something far more deliberate? Because what was just entered into the record raises a question no one in power wants answered, and we're getting to it next.
From Arizona, Mr. Crane, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Grateful to have elected officials from Minnesota here today who can provide more intimate information regarding this mind-blowing fraud coming from the Somali community in Minnesota. According to Assistant U.S. Attorney Joe Thompson, there is an estimated $9 billion or more in fraud. Many obviously believe that this is just the tip of the iceberg. I want to thank and acknowledge the independent reporters Nick Shirley and Dave Hawk who broke this story wide open. Today I'm introducing a bill to award Nick Shirley with the Congressional Medal for his explosive work in exposing astronomical fraud in Minnesota. And the reason I'm doing this is because the American people are sick and tired of this, and they're sick and tired of mainstream media not covering any of it. The biggest question that most Americans, however, have is this: is this incompetence at the executive level with the governor and attorney general? Are they involved and complicit? I'm going to start with you, Ms. Robbins.
Thank you, sir. My understanding is that they were certainly aware of the fraud and they did nothing to stop it. And there were plenty of opportunities. And their commissioners and their agencies also undermined efforts to tighten internal controls.
And according to Ms. Rarick, I believe you said that they were actually going after whistleblowers to suppress the expose of this fraud. Is that correct?
That is what the whistleblowers have said repeatedly.
Thank you. One thing that is so alarming is the reporting that many of these fraudulent companies are then donating the stolen money back to the same Democrats that are protecting them and advocate for these very programs. Is that correct, Mr. Hudson?
I would agree with that statement.
Well, we just had one of my Democrat colleagues said these are just opinions. You know, are these guys donating money back to Democrats?
Yes, they are.
I'd like to enter into the record, Mr. Chairman, an article from Breitbart News saying, with the title being Database Searches Show Somali Fraudsters Funding Democrat Politicians. So these aren't opinions.
Without objection.
It's actually reporting on this. Are you guys aware? You guys are elected officials in Minnesota, right? Are you guys aware of the reporting that some of the stolen money is getting funneled back to the Islamic terror group Al-Shabaab in Somalia? Mr. Robbins.
Yes, sir. And we have evidence of it going back as far as 2012, where a man was convicted of sending $21,000 to Al-Shabaab. In 2011, 2 Minnesota women were convicted of sending money to different groups. Someone else, we have multiple references of how the Al-Shabaab takes a cut when the money gets to Somalia through the Hawala network. So I think there's ample evidence on this and federal convictions.
Yeah, that's outrageous. Obviously, one of the biggest reasons so many Americans are outraged by this massive exposure is because we generously and often foolishly allow immigrants and people into our country, and then they rob the American people blind while our debt skyrockets and the American people struggle to make ends meet. Are you guys hearing from your constituents the same outrage that I'm hearing from mine about this issue?
Minnesotans are fed up. Everywhere I go in the state, Minnesotans are so frustrated. As I said in my opening remarks, we are a highly taxed state, and they are angry that this much of their money, $9 billion, is being absconded by criminals.
Mr. Hudson, are you just hearing from Republicans on this, or are Democrat constituents like, oh my God, I'm struggling to put my kids in school, struggling to make ends meet, and my tax dollars are being robbed by people, and then they're sending it all over the place, and this is complete fraud. What is going on, and why hasn't anything been done about it?
I'll give you a personal example. So my family, my in-laws in particular, are politically diverse. A lot of them vote for Democrats, and they're fairly apolitical. They're not like me, all plugged in. And so I kind of use them as a bellwether for what the people are thinking. Across the board, everybody is upset about this fraud.
And I'm guessing when you guys bring this up, whether it's to the Waltz administration, whether it's to the AG, The number one thing that comes back at you is you're a racist, you're a white supremacist, or you're an Islamophobe. As we've seen Governor Walz now trying to answer for these questions, he's doing it at the national level. Do you guys hear the same thing at the state level as well?
Yes, absolutely. They always pivot to the divisive, as I stated in my opening statement. It's diversion, right? We're going to talk about personalities. We're going to talk about partisan politics. We're going to find some way to get people yelling at each other rather than looking at the problem.
Or, like you've heard my colleagues do on this panel, it's Donald Trump, baby.
Yep.
It's all about Donald Trump, right? The old pivot. We're not going to talk about what's going on in Somalia and not going to talk about what's going on in Minnesota with this massive fraud scandal. We're going to talk about Donald Trump. With my remaining seconds, can we play the video I have, Mr. Chairman? Or did we run out of time?
We did run out of time, but can we put that in the record with that? Can we?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Okay. Thank you, Representative Crane.
What unfolded in that congressional hearing wasn't just another partisan clash. It was a moment where routine oversight suddenly turned into something far more volatile. A sitting member of Congress, Representative Eli Crane, put a staggering figure into the public record, an estimated $9 billion in alleged fraud, and then asked a question that immediately raised the stakes. Was this ignored or was it allowed? Why does this matter now? Because these allegations don't sit in the past. They point directly at current systems, current leadership, and ongoing federal programs, systems still handling billions of taxpayer dollars today. And once accusations like this are spoken under oath, they don't simply disappear. The exchange took place during a formal congressional session where witnesses from Minnesota were questioned about alleged large-scale fraud linked to federally funded programs. According to testimony cited during the hearing, Assistant U.S. Attorney Joe Thompson estimated potential fraud losses at $9 billion or more, with some believing that figure may only represent a portion of what actually occurred. Representative Crane credited independent journalists with first bringing attention to the issue, arguing that mainstream media had largely avoided it. Then the hearing shifted. Witnesses claimed state officials were aware of irregularities and failed to act. They alleged internal controls were weakened instead of strengthened. They described whistleblowers who said they were discouraged or targeted after raising alarms. Crane pressed further, asking whether political leaders were merely negligent or actively complicit. That distinction matters, because incompetence is one failure. Complicity is another entirely. Here's where the conversation becomes more complicated and more uncomfortable. Much of the public focus has been on the headline number, $9 billion. But the deeper issue isn't just the size of the alleged fraud. It's the structure that allowed it to persist. According to testimony, some fraudulent entities were accused of donating money back into political campaigns, including to officials who supported the very programs under scrutiny. Those claims were disputed by some witnesses and framed by others as documented reporting. That raises an obvious question. If oversight bodies are politically entangled with funding recipients, who enforces accountability? The hearing also touched on something even more sensitive. Allegations that small portions of misused funds may have traveled overseas, including references to past federal convictions involving terror financing through informal money transfer networks. These were not new accusations, witnesses said. Some cited cases dating back over a decade. So the question becomes, if warning signs existed years ago, why weren't safeguards strengthened instead of relaxed? And why does public discussion often collapse into accusations of racism or political motive before the financial facts are fully examined? That deflection may be the most revealing detail of all. If even a fraction of these allegations are substantiated, the consequences extend far beyond Minnesota. First, taxpayer trust takes a direct hit. High-tax states rely on public confidence that funds are managed responsibly. When that confidence erodes, compliance drops, resentment grows, and polarization deepens. Second, program credibility suffers. Fraud at this scale doesn't just undermine one initiative. It jeopardizes future funding for legitimate recipients who depend on these programs to survive. Third, there's the national security concern. Even isolated cases of funds reaching hostile actors force federal agencies to reassess risk models, compliance frameworks, and enforcement gaps. And politically, this issue cuts across party lines. Multiple witnesses testified that outrage wasn't limited to Republicans. It was widespread among everyday voters struggling with rising costs and economic pressure. When people feel squeezed and then hear billions may have been misused, anger becomes inevitable. Realistically, several paths are now on the table. Congressional committees may request deeper audits. Federal prosecutors could expand investigations already underway. State agencies may be forced to publicly explain past decisions or the lack of them. There's also growing pressure for structural reform, not just punishment. Stronger internal controls, independent oversight mechanisms, clearer separation between political fundraising and program administration. What's unlikely is silence. Once allegations enter the congressional record, momentum builds, even when headlines fade. This story isn't just about one hearing, one lawmaker, or one state. It's about whether massive public systems can police themselves, or whether accountability only appears when outsiders force it into the light. If oversight fails quietly, fraud grows quietly. And by the time the numbers surface, the damage is already done. So here's the question worth asking. Do Americans have a fraud problem or an accountability problem? And who should be responsible when the warnings go ignored? Let me know what you think.